All right, welcome everybody to Studio B. I am your host, Pastor MDH. Thank you so very much for joining us here on the set of Studio B. Remember, no matter where you're watching us from, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe. And also, wherever you access your podcast from, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, you can find Studio B on those same platforms as well. Today, man, I have a very, 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 very special show, man. I got two brothers to my left and my right, and I want to kind of frame this for you so that you understand what's getting ready to happen here on the set. These two brothers, I got Pastor Lawrence Scott, who is the senior pastor of Harvest Point Church in Pearland, Texas. And then I have Pastor James Lee, who's the executive director of Heavenly Hands. But we have this group. Is it a group? Or is it?
It's a group.
It's a group?
I thought a group.
Yeah. Okay, it's a group, and it's called Curb, and KIRB, and it means Keep It Real Brother. So while all of us are pastors, when we come together in a Curb, it's Scott, it's Holman, and it's Lee, right? So we take the monikers off and just kind of talk amongst brothers, because as pastors, you know, sometimes we need a relief valve and have some people around you that you can share those kind of vulnerable moments with. And so this is one of these things that was, you know, God ordained, I would say, back in 2010. 2009, 2010, somewhere around there.
Around that time, yeah.
So right around that time, man, you know, God put a group of people together, man, and it's been a blessing for me in regards to exchanging ideas in a very safe space, even with people that disagree with you on times but can disagree respectfully. So that's that kind of group that you're getting ready to see here. So I got Pastor Lawrence Scott, Pastor James Lee, or Lee and Scott, and there is, how many did I say, 50 years of marriage? You've been married for
15 years.
15?
19.
That's 34. I'm going on 20. So that's 50 years of marriage at this table. There is 16 kids, 15. You got 6.
I got 6.
I got 4.
5.
And you got 5. What is that?
15.
Yeah, that's 15. 15 kids amongst this right here. And then we got several years of ministry that are represented. So fellas, I am excited about this. Because I know what we bring when we talk.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about some real issues, and we're going to talk about them in a Curb way.
Yeah.
So how you guys doing today, Scott?
I'm doing wonderful. Can I say this? We also have a few other guys who are part of this group who could not be here as part of this Curb piece, and I wanted to make sure that they...
Put their name out there.
So we have Corey Fontenot, we have Scotty Clark Booker.
And Clark Booker. So we got Corey Fontenot, and then we got the resident... don't you hate when Scotty put that stuff on Facebook?
Yeah, he be calling us out, bro.
Did y'all see the little purse?
I saw it.
I was
He
like,
doing leather work now.
Yeah,
and
building stuff. My wife looking at me like, bruh,
so,
where you at?
So check this out, and I hope this makes it onto the cut. 'Cause this is what went through my mind about maybe 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So first of all, Scotty, good looking brother.
Yep.
He got about 2% body fat.
Yeah.
He loves the Lord, so he got that going for him too. He's 20 years younger than me, and he can build with his hands. What in the world is going on
too
around
many
him?
He got too many talents, man.
Yeah. Like Enoch. I think God can just call him up.
Shout out to Corey, to Booker. And you know,
Yeah.
Booker is the old wise owl, so you know he's the balance of the group.
Yeah.
So shout out to those other Curb brothers, man. When we get a bigger set, we'll have everybody in here to kind of chop it up. But man, how you guys doing? How's life treating you guys on both sides?
Man, family's doing amazing. Wife is great. Kids are great. Church is wonderful, man. We're good.
That's good. That's good. Lee?
Everything is good, man. Work is wonderful, busy. The wife and I, of course, as you guys know, we're the empty nesters. So we have a lot of fun running around doing what we do. And the grandkids are there a lot, so...
He's rubbing that in, y'all.
Yeah, just want to let y'all know.
Because I'm over here in the struggle. I got 2 kids in college. I got another one on the way to college. And then 2 years after that, I'll have 4 kids in college. So I'll be eating Roman noodles and Kool-Aid packs for the next 4 years. So, God, y'all be praying for me. But everybody, let's dive right in.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of stuff going on, or still going on.
Yeah.
You know, 2020 was that kind of year. For all of us, in some way, shape, or form, we were going through in some way, shape, or form. But now we are in 2021. Kind of give me your perspective of what life looks like from your vantage point. How are you looking at life through your lens right now, Scott?
Yeah, great question. I think 2020 taught us some stuff. It reminded us of the fact that we can be prepared, but there's some things you can't prepare for. He did not anticipate the pandemic, but it helped us grow in a lot of areas, I think. So personally, as a pastor, I grew a whole lot. You know what I mean? Like, it helped me lead a church through a pandemic, and that has kind of shaped the way I lead going forward. As a church, we grew together. As a family, we grew, had a chance to spend more time together and things like that. So for me, this year is a year where we get to take the things that we learned in 2020 and keep them, at least the positive things, and keep them as an ongoing thing. And so this is not necessarily a rebuild, but a continuation, in a sense, of some positive things. And I think for when it comes to us as people getting back together, I do see a sense of, as people get this vaccine, however they feel about that, us coming back together and returning to some sense of normalcy. But yeah, so I think this year is going to be a chance for people to reconnect, to grow from what they experienced last year, and a lot of positive things happening going forward.
That's a good word, because, when I say for me and my family and, my little worldview, I know it may seem strange to say, but 2020 was actually a very productive year for me. I seen a lot of areas of my life that really grew during that time of all the stuff that was coming at us on a daily basis. Yeah. Family life was wonderful. Me and the wife got to, do what we do. Our kids, they came home from college because they had to negotiate with COVID-19. So, we had the whole family there in the house. Some positive things happened in my life and in our life in COVID-19. So when I sit out there on that ledge and say, actually, when I look back at 2020, it was actually a very productive year for me. And I understand that withstanding all the stuff that we had to deal with, but, just for Team Holman, it was actually a very, very good year. So Lee, how did you frame it? What did 2020 look like for you?
Well, 2020 gave us a push, because working in the service industry with Bethel's Heavenly Hands and the benevolence ministry and feeding folk and taking care of the folk and meeting those needs, because a lot of the people that are in our community and just in the United States, lost their jobs and they didn't have money. So we had to provide services to those folk. And at one point we were doing about 28,000 folk for the month of April and the month of May of last year. So what it did for us was it showed us that we could expand and push ourselves to the limit. And we pushed ourselves to that limit. So now in 2021, we can't go backwards. So it stretched us to the point now that we know that we can go that far. So how much further can we go?
Ain't that a problem with success now? Because once you hit it, even if it's unintentional, you can now not go back because you've hit a certain mark. So let me ask you, fellas. So let's dump into this. Let's look at some of the issues that are still on the table right now. What's the thing on the news? No matter what news cycle that you look at, it's always in your face. We got social unrest. We got political unrest. We got confusion in the land. But let's talk about this race reconciliation, this race issue that we got in America right now that's always on the front line. Kind of give me your thoughts about what that looks like from a 30,000 view, and then let's get into the specifics of it.
Yeah, racial reconciliation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Biblically, obviously, we would pursue that. Right, unity is something that's a work of the Holy Spirit, and those of us who love the Lord should be interested in the work of the Spirit to be unified. But I think, in a broad sense, racial reconciliation hasn't worked for us and is not working like we wanted to, because I think there needs to be a place of racial recognition. Like, what are we reconciling?
Yeah.
And that's the issue.
Yeah.
And I think what you often find is people just disagree. For example, a group of people might say, hey, racism is an experience at the individual level. And whenever that happens at the individual level, we can, be sympathetic, empathetic for that person and help them in that individual space. That's a group of people for the most part. Another group is saying, no, this is a systemic thing. It's bigger than the individual act. It's a system. Now, if we talk racial reconciliation and this group is trying to reconcile with this group, and again, there's some variety of thought in between. We're not talking about the same stuff. So yes, we would both agree to have empathy in these individual spaces. But if this group is saying system and this group is saying no system, then what are we reconciling? And I think we have to have real conversation about that part, recognizing what we're trying to reconcile before we can move forward. And I think we rush to reconciliation because we want to reconcile. And I think sometimes in our rush to it, we put on symbols. So let's do this. Let's have this racial reconciliation service. And some black folks going to come, some white folks going to come, and we go high five, and we go, bam, reconcile.
We done.
But it don't work like that. And that's
so what exactly are we reconciling? What's that target What's that target area?
I think we have to revisit basics, man. Like, what are we talking about when we say racism? Like, let's parse through that, because I think surprisingly, I think we would actually disagree. A lot of people would disagree with what racism is and how they experience it.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
And we need to chop that up. Like, what are we talking about when we talk about racism?
Yeah.
Because it's a broad term.
Sure.
It's a very, very 30,000 foot view, but let's kind of get into the weeds of it.
Okay.
What does that look like? What is racism?
Well, I guess to me, see, because just as Scott said, because you're going to have to define it from your perspective and define it, individually. And to me, we talked about it before, that racism systemically, because the individual racism, each and every person isn't going to be going to see racism the same way. So systemically, for me, racism is putting obstacles in place that's going to keep me from achieving the goals that I can achieve based on the fact that I don't look like you, I don't come from where you came from. So I'm from the systemic aspect of it. That's the way I look at it. I want those things moved, because individually I believe that we can have a conversation, me and a person from another race, and we can get past our differences if we just sit down and have a conversation and understand each other. But then when we go into our separate rooms and our separate circles with people that don't look like the person that I just talked to, now the decision makers, the gatekeepers need to come together and say, you know what, because of that conversation, now I can see that the system is in place to oppress or to hold back or to impede the person's progress based on their race. So that's what it looks like to me.
Okay. And Scott, where's racism for you?
So I would, and can I get a moment here?
Oh, yeah.
So I try to think of it, obviously we all think of it from a biblical perspective, but practically first, and then I'll jump into that. I think a lot of folks like to make the distinction, and we should make the distinction between prejudice, discrimination, and racism.
Okay.
So when a person is prejudiced, they may have stereotypes. They may not be in community with other people, but they have these stereotypes and things they believe that are negative about a particular group, and they can be prejudiced towards them based on those stereotypes, right? And then you have a person who discriminates, who acts on that prejudice. So I believe, for example, black people are something negative, whatever, and so I act on that belief. That's discrimination. Racism takes prejudice and puts power behind it. Now when I have the authority to make laws, now when I have the financial support to affect people, that's when, for me, I think that's the broader definition of racism, when it can affect a system. So from a biblical perspective, I would say, and we know this, right? Genesis chapter 1, we are made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. I think racism says, I don't buy that. I think the Bible says, because we are made in the image, God has created us diverse. So God wants diversity in unity. We can be diverse and unified. That's God's way. I think racism says, nah, fam, we ain't doing that. We're going to have antagonism and diversity. So I think it's a complete shift of plans. I think God's plan is like everybody, you can look different, you can be from different places, different cultures, different skin colors, and I still want you to be unified, because that's going to be a witness to the world. Whereas racism says, nah, some of y'all, I don't buy that. I'm better than, you're Lord, you're less than the image of God. And it's a complete shift of plans. And so, again, the individual acts, can a person be racist? Yeah, I think they can carry out in a way where they work through their prejudice and would support a system to disenfranchise and oppress a group. But bigger than that, I'd say it's an exchange of plans. It's God's way, diversity and unity, and then racism, man's way, which says disunity and antagonism to this type of diversity.
So that's an excellent segue, Scott, because I think that's why I truly believe in the core of my being, man, the conversations like this where you begin to start to break apart this big old thing that seems so big, but when you start breaking it down into manageable pieces, it begins to be a whole lot more digestible. So for me, man, I'm looking at this racism debate and this racism kind of culture right now in two different forms. I'm looking at it from a 2020, 2021, 2010, all the way up. And then I'm looking at it from a 1950, 1960. Okay, so when I look at the conversation about racism in 1950, 1960, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, when they were talking about racism back in that day, they were talking about putting together specific plans and policies to bridge this gap. The conversation now is driven in 2020, at least from my vantage point, is that we're not talking about specifics like that. We are talking about exacting revenge on those who we think have oppressed us. So the conversation is now not let's do X, Y, and Z, and let's not define prejudice, discrimination, and racism. Break those down into the categories that they need to break down, and then having fruitful conversations thereof. It is now talking about let's go get the people that we think are oppressing us. So the dialogue just kind of being thrown against the wall, but nothing sticks. And so now you got a whole bunch of mad people, but can't sit around and talk about the issues that will bridge the gaps that everybody know exist. So when I'm looking at this thing, I'm looking at it from two different vantage points. I would like to see productive conversation about how do we move forward on economic advancement, educational advancement, how do you close some of those gaps? And those are very specific conversations that we need to have. You being in the financial industry, you know how we can close some of those gaps in our community and less fortunate communities. We can do that. But when we start talking in the clouds, when there's no real solution at the end of our discussion, then it just continues to be a discussion upon discussion.
But let me, no, I'm sorry not to cut you off, but you know how we do.
That's correct.
So let me understand what you're saying. You're saying that it's not so much that the people they have a specific agenda or they have specific ideas about what needs to happen or what needs to take place as they did in the 50s and 60s. Now they're just kind of shotgunning, I'm mad because I'm black and you treat me a certain way. But if you look at the system, excuse me, prior to 1950, when the Reformation happened, and in 1870, when there was, the civil rights laws were in the books in 1870. And if they were on the books and then they were taken away. So I think Frederick Douglass said that the black man was a slave, then he was freed, then he was forced back into slavery. So it doesn't start from 1950, it goes to back to 1870. So when that system is in place to take away the rules and take away the rights that you have, what do you do about that? How do you say I'm not angry about that?
So to that point, so we're talking about the system as a whole, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to your example in the 1860s, 1870s, when the system was in full effect. Everybody that had this particular skin tone was affected by that system. The parents, the kids, the grandkids, everybody that had this kind of tone was affected by that system when it was in full force. To your first point, Scott, on an individual basis, if the system is designed to hold a certain people down, then that system that is holding that person down or that people group down, everybody in that people group is affected by that system. You don't have that case right now. You have a lot of black people that are not affected by that particular system. So to your point, Scott, about individualism on the side of somebody saying, I've experienced it at a very individual basis, so I can be empathetic and sympathetic to it, that's a discussion that we need to have. But to broad stroke it in that same view by saying that in 1870 this was like that and the system is still doing the exact same way in 2021.
No, the system is actually worse now because in 1870, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida had black senators that they sent to that they sent to Washington, D.C. and black congressmen. So there were a lot of black men in Congress and in the Senate in 1870. So really we were in a better situation where we had votes and we had a voice in Washington more so than we have now. I understand what you're saying, that, we have a voice in Washington now, but at that time they were, it was legislated that black folks could be equal just on the legislative level, that you had to give them an opportunity. So now we had the legislation from 1965. See, so I think we're talking about two different things, because we had the legislation from 1965, but then they found ways to take away some of the rights or not give some of the rights. But the racism that we're talking about, the system that we're talking about economically, socioeconomically, and educationally, that system is still in place.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, so, with this conversation, I think if after the Civil War, black folks are repaired, right, with this idea of land and whatever, if they receive that, because what actually happened is the slave owner got taken care of, right? So if slavery's in place, okay, now you're free, slave owner, here's some stuff. But if black people would have been repaired, we wouldn't even be having some of these conversations because, and you've been in finance too, one of the benefits of having wealth early is time.
Absolutely.
So when you go back to the systems and structures that are in place, let me do it like this. I was born in 1980. My mother was born in 1945. My grandmother was born in the 1920s. That's 3 generations. If grandmother would have had access, now grandma had a little stuff, But grandma, I'll tell you the story. If she would have had access to the wealth that other folks had access into 1920s, it would have affected my mother. Because mama would have had some stuff.
Been a ripple effect.
And then I would walk into some stuff, but that's not the case. So how it shows up today is that Lawrence Scott, born in 1980, has to do a work to build some generational wealth that was handed to other folks by the government. You see what I'm saying? So the government participated in the advancement of particular people and participated in the demise of another group. So when we sit here at this table in 2021, when you walk down the street, do you experience the same racism that a person in 1960 experienced? I don't know. Depending on where you are. But the system that helped perpetuate the gap in generational wealth is still in place. Because at the end of the day, I didn't have the time to obtain that wealth that I could walk in today. And because black people have never been repaired, so they talk reparation. I don't even know what that looks like.
No.
But because we've never been repaired, like, for example, with Germany and Jews, they were repaired. That's why they're in the position they're in. We continue to have this conversation because there's a difficulty here in this country, specifically, to not only acknowledge some stuff, but be realistic about what it looks like to work through it. And so when you say, for example, in a previous system, everybody experienced it, and in this system, not everybody experiences, that's why we have to move it from just the individual act and recognize that it is a structural thing. Now, if you're black and you don't need and you have so much wealth, or you're in a position where you don't have to ask for anything, you might say that person is in a position where they don't experience racism because the powers that be can't affect them because they live outside of it. I would argue that there's an experience they can have even with that wealth that would suggest that racism is real to them. And I think that's why you see even celebrity folk who otherwise could just be about their own business, lend their voice to this, even though they appear to be in a position where they wouldn't feel any of it.
Because that's individual as opposed to systemic.
Right.
Okay, so when you're talking about the system,
Yeah.
and we're talking about the financial system.
Facts.
So when you're going from generation to generation, and we do know, if you're a student of history, you understand how certain people got, in your words, repaired,
Yep.
right? And then how that affected generations moving forward. And so that this generation in 2020 is better off because great-great-grandma way back when started off with something, and then it just kind of passed down through the family lines.
And continually, every line after that received help that black people didn't. So it's not just that wealth from then, but, you know, if I can't build a house in this community or I can't get a loan in this community 50 years ago, well, there's 50 years ago worth of wealth that I did not have a chance to receive that affects me today. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so in that same vein, so where does the process of, okay, that's what it is. So when do we, as black folk, individual and as a whole, when do we, or do we have the power, let me put it like that, to change that paradigm? Do we have the ability as black folks in 2021 and beyond to begin to affect that particular paradigm to where our generations and future generations thereof are affected because of what we do right now?
So let me say this. A conversation about racism never means that black people or people who are in the quote-unquote oppressed group historically are unable to, right? First of all, we are people of faith. Like God has been with, you know what I'm saying? Not just black folks, but it is evident the Lord is with us. So this is never a conversation about inability. It's just the reality of the situation. I think people, even in previous generations, like there'll be some black folks who sit at this table and said, no, my great-grandfather had 50 acres, had 100 acres, and had 30 businesses. So there's always been opportunity for that, and we can perpetuate that positivity. And I would also suggest that this conversation is not so when we talk racism, is not an excuse or a scapegoat for failure.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So you can
yeah.
acknowledge the reality of your situation and still go get it. Go get your education. Go get your career. Go start your business. Go educate yourself. Put your kids in it. All that. And I believe we at this table have tried to model that. So it's not an excuse. Yes, to answer your question, long way to answer it. Yes, because at the end of the day, go back to Genesis 1. We're created in the image of God. God got this. We have some things we work through, but yes, we can change it.
And I think that what's happened, especially with us, first of all, you know, we talked about it. Black folks, when you see one black guy doing something wrong, everybody black's done something wrong. So we take the pain and we take the shortcomings of all of our people on our back. Even though when we took some of the successes of our people on our back as well. But when you look at that our responsibility, or can we get past it? Yes, but we've got to start to realize, and the people on the other side have got to realize that we can press on and can make it through. I don't want to be like the total antagonist, but I guess that's my role here today. But when the system is set up, when it has been set up from the very beginning, back to what I was saying as we're going back to when the slaves were freed. When there was opportunity for blacks, it was taken away.
Facts.
Because we didn't want to see blacks succeed and whites not succeed. So that's all those years of that oppression, all those years of post-traumatic stress that we have as a group, if you will, because after a while you start believing I can't because somebody is constantly telling you that you can't. Now, I'm not built that way. When you tell me that I can't, that's going to make me press a little bit harder to see that I can or see if I can. And it's obvious that black folks did it. That's why black folks got lynched. That's why Medgar Evers died. That's why Frederick Douglass kept on fighting. So do we say that black folks are sitting to the point, black folks are at the point where they just say, well, you know what, I can't, so therefore I'm going to give up? No, I don't think so.
So to that point, I don't think that anybody outside of this conversation or even closely related to it is going to acknowledge or not acknowledge the fact that America has not always lived up to that 1776 document, that Constitution, that Bill of Rights. It was not equal rights for all people. I get that. I don't think anybody that is genuine will sit there and say that America has always been like that. So we acknowledge that. I acknowledge that.
Okay.
The facts are the facts. I mean, all you got to do is just simply do a simple search through history, and everything that you're talking about, you can be clearly found. What I am saying in regards to the race conversation is that while we acknowledge those certain things, and while those certain things are true, that there are people in our culture that risked their lives, got their lives taken away from them in order to try to bridge this gap. People got killed, like literally bullets through their head. The people got killed on this particular battlefield. But the idea that those systems that are once in place then, and Scott, you said something when we had a curve moment a few months ago, that the system allows successes. And you said that the system, in order for the system to be the system, it's got to allow for certain successes. Well, that's one of the things that I want to talk about, because if the system is the system and the system is protecting itself, then it cannot allow for successes.
See, why does it have to be?
Because the system is protecting itself.
But why does it have to be all or nothing? See, and that's the issue, is that we look at it, we want it to be all or nothing.
No, I'm
It's
saying
black
that the
or white.
system, I'm saying that the system is dismantling. That's why it's allowing for successes. I'm not saying that the system is completely gone. Anybody can look around the landscape of America and say, that's not right. I know why that happened. Everybody can look at that. What I'm simply saying is that the system is folding on itself. Slowly, but it is folding on itself, because it is allowing not only successes from black people, but from minorities from every walk of life. So the system is folding in on itself slowly but surely. Now, will it be to the point to where our kids, our great-grandkids are able to experience a much better day than we? I believe that that's coming.
But is that what we experienced on January 6th? Fear that the system is folding? See, so now we move ahead to today.
But see, you're talking about on the side, I'm talking about for black America.
So let me say this, and you're right in that. I think okay. So sometimes the conversation goes, "Hey, is it as bad?" We may not say this, but this is kind of where it lends itself. Are things as bad today as it was 50 years ago, 100 years ago?
Nothing is it?
Right. But I will say that over the years, racism has learned to become more hidden.
Okay,
right? So
adapted.
It adapted. So it wasn't as overt. It's covert. It's part of the system. So yeah, the system has always allowed for successes. Even back in, early 1800s, I'm sure there were some black folks who had a position over other black folks, because the owner felt a certain kind of way about that person or whatever. So there's always been places for success. But we still have to acknowledge that a lot of what happens to black folks, or that has happened to black folks, is because of the system. For example, and I will be transparent and honest at this point. My posture normally, if I hear a statistic about black folks that's way higher than other folks, my first thought is to say the system helped create that, because my posture is that black folks are not more immoral, less educated, when they have the opportunity, than any other people. So if they have a stat that's negative, that's higher than other groups, I'm saying it's because of the system. That's
the system has created it.
And then I open it up and look at the details, and then I arrive at my conclusion, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. If you pull out stats and you see it's high for black folks, unless you believe black folks are just inferior.
Yeah. Well, that's to your point, though. That's to your racism point. So some people group will say that group, I don't care what we're looking at, is inferior to another group.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the point. I get that part.
Yes.
And Scott, I get that. I completely acknowledge that. But when we're looking at the system in regards to positions of power that can affect everybody under the system, the system is now allowing people like us in those positions of power that can affect everybody under the system.
But you got to acknowledge, though, that a person and a system can't change it that quickly.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But I agree. But so black
But see,
people,
that's what I'm saying. It's. I'm not saying it's an overnight thing.
Gotcha.
And I always got to preface this anytime I'm talking about race, because people look at me crazy. Like I'm just, a pie in the sky.
This Republican,
like this just crazy. I believe, but me and Scott had an off-camera conversation about a year ago.
Yeah.
People reason from their reality. Okay, you got some truth, but then you mix some experience in, and that's what people reason from. I am by no way, shape, or form saying that racism is eradicated. Come on, y'all, that's crazy. But I do believe that the system, is imploding in itself.
See, you want to remove the excuse because of the way you were raised. Like you said, we are a sum of our experiences, right? Everything that is us to this day was experiences that we had prior to this day. So as we've talked before, because you've overcome so much, you said your mom would never let you have an excuse. Ever have an excuse. So because of the way that you're put together, you're automatically looking for ways to remove the excuse and find out how to press through. Everybody doesn't have that. Everyone doesn't have that. Like I just said, because of the way that I was raised, if you show me, you say I can't, that means I'm going to try a little bit harder. The same thing as Scott, as he was raised, going through all the things that he went through. It's like, man, that's just another obstacle. And what does that mean? There's a way over it, under it, around it, or through it.
But these brothers here, you got story. And I'm not saying about, again, it's not talking. Okay, can I get it? Because I feel like.
Yeah, that's how it is. You knew when you brought this together what was going to happen.
I knew that.
This is the text message that goes all the time. Yours is red, and we like, man. Okay.
I mean.
Come on.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this. So I think we have to be fair, and I think this is where I tend to lean, right? Because I'm not for people making excuses either.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let me just say before you go, neither am I.
Yeah, I know that.
That don't happen in my house.
Y'all couldn't be encouraging.
Right.
Okay.
I am also aware that for a lot of folks, they may not have the same defining moment that caused that change. Like for you may have had a moment, and I know we've talked, but you may have had a moment specifically where your mom made a decision that ultimately saved your life. Do you have those moments? There's a person down the street from you who mom didn't do that, right? So you got to, like if you were raised in an environment, I was raised in the hood, like when you...
I wasn't.
Right, but when you... You have to put that in the street.
That's a comic relief.
But like this, it's not as simple as saying waking up in the hood one day and say, you know what? Tomorrow I'm not gonna be in the hood. Nah, you probably gonna be there, right? But when you get older, like I spent most of my childhood in poverty, but when I got older, I made some decisions to do something different. But imagine a kid right now being raised in an environment, 5 years old. Everybody around him sell dope. That's a reality in this world. Every person he looks up to is pulling him to that game. Now, there's another 5-year-old who's in some remote suburb who doesn't have to experience that. Now, you can't tell me that this guy, this 5-year-old, won't have a more challenging time arriving. It's not simply because, it's in part because the people around him, but the system has allowed people, and black folks specifically, to be more in poverty than other folks. Not an excuse. Like those guys who are leading that 5-year-old, they're doing the wrong thing.
But we also got to acknowledge, Scott, that the system also incentivizes.
Oh, absolutely.
Incentivizes people staying in that position.
Oh, no doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
And so while he has a different reality than the guy in River Oaks because he lives in Fifth Ward, the system is going to say, I know this personally. We could have got a whole lot more money in WIC when me and my wife was going through in 2003, if I'd have just simply said that she wasn't married.
Right.
We'd have got double what we eventually got.
Right.
Just not married her.
Right, and just saying, hey, just check the box, not married.
Facts.
And that's what the lady told me at the window.
Right.
She said, y'all can get double this if you just say you're not married.
Right. And if you would have did that, you can't blame anybody for pursuing that trifling, I would say, pathway.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You can say, hey,
I didn't do that, by the way. I got my wife as a witness.
Yeah. So those are the personal decisions we have to make. So it's two things. There's personal accountability and responsibility, and acknowledgement that for some folks, they're in a situation that's just harder for them to get out of.
So that's so fellas, okay, let's marry that. Personal responsibility, acknowledging. The point that I'm saying is that while we acknowledge, there's a lot of conversation about acknowledging.
Then what's the responsibility?
There's a lot of conversation, and we need to have that. We need to directly point to these particular issues. There's a lot of conversation about the acknowledgement.
Okay.
But there's not equally an amount of conversation about the personal responsibility.
On both sides. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I would say there's a lot of conversation on personal responsibility, and I would also say this. I would say this, and maybe I should have said this earlier. I tend to have this conversation, I think we all do, in three ways. Well, considering three things. That when we talk about race, we need to be biblical.
Yeah.
We need to be historic.
Absolutely.
And we need to be factual.
Yeah.
So when you talk about, there's a lot of conversation about acknowledgement today. Studies would show how systemic racism shows up in the medical field, how systemic racism shows up in finance, how it shows up in home ownership, in every area. Now, as with this church, I pastor a church with a lot of people who are in different professions. They would tell you about their successful folks will tell you about their success and how they wrestle with racism, how racism affects their ability to move around in their departments, how it affects how many contracts they get. So all those things, when we talk about the conversation that acknowledges, we can't just say, hey, it's there and then not do all your work. We have to acknowledge it and recognize that because it is there, it still helps, it still affects how people move. And at the same time, that professional can't say, well, because you don't want to give me the contract, I'm just going to quit the job. And right. So I think there is conversation. In fact, most of the conversation, I think, happens with empowerment and next steps. I know you do some of that here, but I see a lot of that conversation. So when you say it's more acknowledgement, but not enough about, I guess, how we overcome some of this stuff, I see a lot of that conversation happen.
So go ahead, Lee. I know you. I know the. No. Go ahead. He's boiling over here. I can feel him in my ear.
Because I was getting ready to shift. I was getting ready to switch teams because of what Scott just said. Because if just because of the way I was put together, if just because there's an obstacle, I'm still going to break
right.
through. But what I was saying is a lot of times even what we're doing here, this conversation between three black men that have our experiences with racism and the questions that are being asked. But as I said before, and when we talked before, these conversations need to leave this context. And like Scott said, biblical, historical, those are the ways that we look at this, but it needs to leave this context because we can sit here all day long and talk about how bad it is for us, but until we go out and talk to some folks that don't look like us, till we go out and talk to some folks that have the opportunities and they have the keys or the doorway to opportunity, till we go out and talk to them, all we doing, man, is just sitting here.
But that's the point of a platform like this.
Yeah, okay.
Because a lot of people are not going to come in church and say to somebody behind a pulpit and.
But we need somebody at this table. We need a fourth dude at this table.
Well, but the way that the conversation is sparked is in regards to this. Right, opening up an open platform and having, and again, with this particular thing is, and Curb, that is important for me as Curb. These guys, I've shared in my own personal testimony. You got to have authentic relationships that are able to absorb disagreement, right? And you may not agree on the same things from the same vantage point, but you value the other's opinion, and you're able to glean from conversations. That's what I think is missing right now in this public discourse about racism. It's because one side is trying to prove to the other side, and the other side is trying to prove to the other side, and neither side are listening. And so when you have conversations like this, maybe, we need a fourth person at the table that we can talk to in that particular arena. But I do believe that this offers a valuable viewpoint of people seeing black folks, black men in particular, sit around and talk about something articulately, not cussing people out.
Don't say articulate. You know how I feel about that.
Yeah, he feels a certain kind of way when I say black men and being articulate, as if I get that.
We're
My
the
bad.
only ones that are articulate.
Let me rewind that. Let me rewind it. Take articulate out.
Yeah.
But these kind of
So
conversations are valuable.
Yeah.
So I would say this, just to give the audience perspective. I have this conversation with white pastors all the time. All the time. I would say in the last year, my ratio of black to white, 4 white, 1 black. Because this is the conversation that we've been having. And I would say, in love, that a lot of our brothers who don't live in this space are just not informed. And so that goes back to the initial conversation. What are we talking about? I talked to one pastor for 4 hours. We sat together for 4 hours. And at the end of the conversation, and again, I tried to be biblical, historic, and factual. At the end of the conversation, I realized, and again, this is just anecdotal. It's not everybody. It's not everybody. For 3 times, it's not everybody. It's okay. But I realized that his bias and what he had been taught was so embedded that he was unwilling to change it. And I know any person can experience this, but this is what happens. We believe what we believe, and we come to the table to have this conversation, but we both think we're right, and so nobody wants to move.
Exactly, yeah.
And so it becomes a very difficult conversation. And I find that for me personally, when I experience racism, it's not like I'm talking about much of it outside of the church. I'm talking about church folks.
Yeah.
So I move around in predominantly white spaces all the time. And again, there are a lot of white folks who love Jesus, who are not racist. Like, you don't have to be a racist person for us to exist in a racist system.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a very difficult conversation to have. And that's why when you talk about the fourth person, sometimes I think their posture is, well, if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to come
exactly.
up. So they take it all in. They never express.
Yeah.
And then when they finally do express, you're like, bro, you believe that?
Yeah.
So but you're right. It needs to be more of that on a regular basis.
Let me just jump in here too with that, because as we're going, I want to kind of shift it, because I'm sitting here thinking as the elder statesman of the group, right?
Yes.
Like, not as smart.
You are the oldest one.
Yeah. I'm not the smartest guy in the room by far when I'm in this room, but as the elder statesman, because it seems as though we're shaping or framing this discussion or argument from the victim standpoint, and that's not where we want to be. We don't want to be seen as the victim, because, as Scott was just saying, that he talks to these folk, and from their upbringing and from their experiences, this is kind of where they are, and this is what it is, and they see us as the victim. But how many of us have been told what we can't do, and we need to just keep our eyes down, or keep your head down? Don't say that. Don't make too many waves from our folk that keep us from want to press through and push through. Because as you were saying, that you have some professional folk that experience racism. So when we experience this racism, do we just kind of blow it off, or do we kind of just say, well, because this is what always happens, I'm not going to push back? Are we going to keep coming from a victim standpoint? Because that's where most of our conversation as African Americans comes from as the victim. Yes, you want to educate some of your Anglo friends. Yes, I have a guy that I talked to this week, and he just says, what can I do? What can I do? How can I help? And I want to have a real conversation with him. Go ahead.
And by the way, a lot of Anglo friends who love Jesus who are pressing this issue well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But, that conversation about victim is an interesting one, because I think in this dialogue, if we say victim, then are we also saying victor? Are we saying there's a winner and then there's the... open up that idea of it's coming from a victim perspective. What do you mean by that?
When we sit and look at where we are, see, now, as you can see, Pastor Holman, he just sat back. He's like,
Go ahead, Lee.
Lee got this one.
Take it, Lee.
Because as we look at this thing from our perspective, we're always saying what hasn't happened, or what hasn't been given, or what hasn't been done from the system's standpoint. But what about what hasn't been done and what hasn't happened from our standpoint? I know for a fact that my grandmother would say, I would use those black folks, but you can't trust them. And she's just as black as me. You know what I mean? And but when that stuff is put in you, then you start to, we were just laughing, making a mess with Holman, you start self-loathing. And then you automatically start thinking, well, I don't know if I want to, because that's how we were taught, and that's how we were treated. So now, as we look at how the system works, and I'm angry because black people don't have these opportunities, and Pastor Holman, looking at the number of people that are, or the ages of the people that were in the streets protesting, man, they ain't been through nothing like our grandmothers have been through. So I understand where the anger comes from, because they want opportunity. But then a lot of us are saying, well, you know what, man, if they would just get out of my way, or if they would just stop treating me this way, I could be better.
So where's the balance at, Lee?
I don't know.
That is, Lord, that's going to be a catchphrase. And again, it's there. The giant is in the room. The giant is in the room. We absolutely get it. Everybody, it's out there. But I believe that the greatest revenge is success. And I believe that this generation coming up now, this generation that has been born post Jim Crow, this generation that is seeing the diversity on all different levels from all different walks of life, it's just kind of what it is now. We all got kids. Like our kids, they know they got friends, close friends that are in the LGBT community. Like it's just something normal to them. Like you see women in high potential positions. This stuff is just normal. The diversity of today is normal with this generation. And so the system that has at one point in time was viciously oppressing a particular group of people, we all can acknowledge that system is slowly being dismantled. And my vantage point is this. and it's not an exclusive or an individual thing, but the people that I know from A to Z, name whatever struggle you want from A to Z. I know people that overcame that. So here's my thing. Why not push forth the narrative that, yeah, man, there's some stuff out there. Life is going to slap the hell out of you. You're going to encounter some people that are not going to want to make you go forward. But if I can share you, and if I got Pastor Lee, and both of you guys got tremendous testimonies. You're a freaking doctor now.
PhD, Dr. Lawrence Scott Jr.
And so I'm not individualizing Lawrence Scott, but I'm saying Lawrence Scott was way over here and had every reason, and nobody would have blamed you for checking out. Nobody would have blamed Holman for checking out. Pastor Lee of Philadelphia, nobody would have blamed him for checking out. But you had a certain responsibilities and decisions that you made that made your life progressively better, and that's going to affect every generation of Scott from this time forward.
No, that's fair. But I think, so let me add to that. I also had some uncles who came and got me, right? I had a mother and a grandmother who could pray, right? And so Lawrence Scott didn't get Lawrence Scott out of the situation. Lawrence's community, God and Lawrence's community got lost. And so, and I did make some good decisions with that. But I think the problem with this conversation at times is it becomes a conversation about, it's almost like if you talk about racism, then you're complaining about not advancing or not being successful. And we kind of frame it like the conversation about racism is a black poor conversation. So it's about, you know what I mean? And I'm, to your point, I live in the suburbs, man. We got a decent house. I got a couple degrees. I pastor a church with a lot of folks who are just like me. I got a couple jobs, so I make a decent income. So for me to have this conversation and to be adamant about it, to frame it as, why are you making excuses? No, I'm just saying as a Bible-believing Christian, I have a responsibility to call out injustice. You see what I'm saying? There's a portion of people who wake up with that, a certain kind of way. But I think most people, reasonable folks, are saying, no, we have a responsibility to call out injustice. That's it. And
the people like you, Scott, are the ones that need to be. This conversation is not on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC. It's the folks. We've been unjustly.
Why are you yelling?
That was heavy.
That was heavy. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's heavy.
Oh my goodness.
So I'm not. There is a balance, and again, we have to address those particular issues as Bible-believing Christians. We have to call out injustice everywhere we see it. Absolutely par for the course. But in that same vein, as we call it out, let's additionally say, as you said, this is what it is. This is how we can get past this. Let's put together some grassroots solutions, financially, educationally, wherever that may be, redlining, whatever the conversation may be, about how we move past that. Because what's going to affect this changing is you doing something about it.
So man, you hit it, and I want to be clear on something. No shame on black poor. This ain't no. Like,
come on.
Nah.
It ain't like ain't nobody around here millionaires.
No. Just the fact, Genesis 1, we all got dignity. But I think the issue is that, to your point, we do need to have other folks at the table, I suppose, having this conversation. But take the national narrative, like, for example, and this is not political, but it kind of is. Often when the conversation about black needs come up in the public discourse. And I'm going to talk about the previous president because he was just, the way he said it really just ticked me off. But it was often, what about blacks? The first thing you run to is the job numbers, which is important. Which is important. 3 times is important. but more than a few months of increase in job, make sure that there's a public discourse of dignity, right? And oftentimes when he would talk about black people, you might as well take out black and put poor.
Yeah.
Because everything he had to say about black people really was a positive.
It was interchangeable.
Yeah.
But that's his perspective.
But see, that's what I'm saying. When you drive that publicly, then that becomes the issue. Listen, I had a guy, true story, anecdotal, but it's true. White guy come to my house, came in with his Bible. He came to fix the AC. Christian, came in with his Bible. Jesus is on the main line. I mean, he's singing songs in my house. He says to me, I just want, and I'm praying for your people. I'm praying for your people. I'm like, bro, and I talked to the Lord, cover me, trying to be saved in these streets. And he basically said everything lending itself to this perspective that black folks basically have an extra type of demon or something. Like, y'all, you know what I mean? And I listened, and before I got on him, I listened to him. Before I had to get him right, I listened to him, and just the perspective. Now, he's an employer, right? He has a staff. That's going to affect who he hires folks. Right? And people in position have perspectives. When we drive the narrative that, black can be exchanged for just poor and welfare, going back to the 60s, this picture of black people being the recipient of welfare, when we know the main recipient of welfare is not black folks. Never has been.
Yeah, that's right.
Never
even
has
today.
been. Even today.
Yeah.
So the narrative publicly is always this negative thing. So when you talk about there need to be more voices at the table, there are voices at the table, but people want to drive them to a particular place to be a certain type of,
But
person.
see, so when we had this conversation, my point is that guy, whoever he was, is working for a black man.
No, I'm with it. But when
he's getting his check from a black man.
But when he hires, when he hires his team, he's gonna say, I ain't hiring that black dude because they got an extra demon.
Got a black demon.
And again, by the way, any employer can have a prejudice in affected decisions. I'm just saying historically. That's like going back to Civil War. After slavery, after a group of people fought to keep slavery. Yeah. After they lose, they get public office. So you don't think they go take their same set? Really,
and so Scott, to your point, man, we got people that are 80. Like there is a age requirement to run for president. 35 years old. There should be an age limit.
My Lord.
There should be nobody running for president.
No, then that's age discrimination.
No. You have people in office.
Ageism.
That is 70 plus.
Got it.
That grew up.
Yes, sir.
In the Jim Crow era.
Yes, sir.
Grew up under the Jim Crow era. They are taking that mentality into whatever position of power that they have been elected in.
Yeah.
So if you are born pre-Jim Crow, you shouldn't be able to run for office. That needs to be put on the books by somebody.
He don't mean that.
No, not at all.
That's ageism.
Let's just say, yes, he's not discriminating at all. It's just he's been overtaken.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lee, go ahead.
I don't even know where I'm going after that.
I took it back and brought
So we were talking about the victim and yes. That makes sense. I just want to make sure that we don't allow that victim mentality. And it's not just us, because now you're looking at, when I say us, I mean black folks. Every group is calling themselves a victim, that the system has and the government has held them down. But in this context, we're going to continue to have the conversations, with the folks and try to change their perspective or let them see it from our perspective. But we also have got to see it too from their perspective, because they're a victim of that exact same system, because most of the folks are working class folk just like us. And then the narrative that is created was that they're taking your job. And they're taking your land. They're taking your rights. And it's the same exact narrative that was preached during the Reformation. It's being preached now. We've got to come together and realize that we are the same, the imago Dei. We have been created in the image of God, and we do need to call out all of the injustices. But we got to tell folks that the injustice is that they're telling you that I'm against you and telling me that you're against me when we're all and we're created in God's image the same.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
Yeah.
And so how do we man, time has really gotten by.
Man, it's your show. You go long.
So when you're talking about made in the victimhood and things of that nature, nobody, at least not from my perspective in the conversations that I'm having, because I'm trying to broaden this conversation to different vantage points in the areas in which God has allowed me to serve in. You know, I serve on boards with, I'm not going to say predominantly, all white. Right? Like, I'm the only black guy in there.
The fly in the onion.
Yeah, right. So I'm the pepper on top of the rice, right?
Yeah.
And so when I'm trying to drive these conversations like an organization that I'm with right now that does a lot of work in predominantly African communities, as I told them, it's easier for you to travel 10,000 miles to Africa than it is for you to go 15 miles down 610, right? Because that's a safe space for this particular organization. It's a safe space for them to go to Africa as missionaries because they're held as the saviors.
But see, you this a whole nother show though, because in the church, to your point, that's in churches, Houston, when you have predominantly white churches, for example, in this community, and then 5 miles this way, you have a community that's suffering, and they don't invest heavily there. Why do you think that is? Like, it's historic. So I think that's so important that we understand that what's happening today is connected to history. Even as things are changing, it's connected to history. Like, a lot of times, there's this idea that the reason black folks are in the situation they're in is solely today because of their own doing. Why would I put money and resources in that community when you're just going to waste it?
But they ain't trying.
They ain't trying. And again, listen, I'm not saying every church is like that. I'm saying I'm not speaking. I'm speaking from experience. I live in this space. And so what I found often is that very thing. They may put a couple dollars here and there, but over here, why would I give to y'all when I could give it and be really impactful overseas? And so that type of mindset still exists. So things are changing, but that still shows up.
And so that's the slow grind of where we are, because that is something in our circles as pastors that we, as you said before, Scott, our Christian brothers on the other side, our Anglo-Christian brothers and sisters, they love Jesus. Yes. I think some of them, I'm not going to say all of them, I think some of them are just implicit to some of those things that they just don't know, because they have grown up in that, as we all have a personal experience to connect to whatever viewpoint that we may have. So how do we, at the end of the day, man, we're pushing up on this. We didn't even get to the religion side. I'm going to ask you guys to look at your calendar, because we spent this time talking about race. There's so much more that I want to get into.
Yeah, man. I ain't even no scripture, man.
Yeah,
but Micah, just call out some scripture, man. Shoot.
Well, we talked about Genesis 1:1. Okay. That's foundational. That's foundational. But I hope in Jesus' name, man, that the conversation can be pushed forth in these kind of regards, because I think that we need to take it out of the clouds and bring it down to a grassroots level.
I agree.
Because it's a highly divisive conversation, if you will. People automatically get on edge. One group thinks that they're attacking the other one, and the other one feels, because I'm attacked, I got to be on the defense. So each side can never glean from one another's arguments. So I do believe that it's a public discourse that needs to be addressed in a very holistic way. So let me give you guys some closing comments on whatever you want to talk about.
So let me say this. I think in this conversation, it's a good conversation, and it does go on. And when we talk in general terms, the white church, the predominantly white, we recognize that doesn't apply to every church and every individual. And so for those who are watching, just understand that, right? This conversation needs to continue, but it needs to be biblical, historical, factual, and I think we can move the ball down the field.
And then we need to talk about specific ways of bridging the chasm that exists educationally, economically, socioeconomic, whatever moniker you want to put up there. There are specific things that we could be doing in this regard. To help bridge, not close it completely, because Rome wasn't built in a day. I think we can begin to bridge this gap over some years, and even over some generations as well. Because the decisions that I'm making here in 2020, I'm praying will affect my kids, which will ultimately affect their kids and their kids and their kids. And so 5 generations down the road, that generation has some money that their great-great-great-grandfather and grandmother put aside so that they get that same economic opportunity. So, Pastor Lee.
I believe that we have to continue to handle and have the conversations on the individual level to put those building blocks in place so that the foundation can be firm. Yeah, we can have the broad conversations about the 30,000-foot view, but just as you said, the grassroots starts at the roots.
Yeah.
So we need to continue to have relationships with people that don't look like us, but say they think like us. We're talking about Christians. All right? And we build those relationships. And as we build those relationships, then we can build that foundation. And then that's where it starts. So you start to see people for who they are, start to look at people not as a color or as a different political side of the aisle. You look at those people for who God says they are. You can start to, as Scott said, move the needle.
I say, look at people in their color, by the way. So I want to disagree with you before we close. Thank you.
I did disagree with everybody today.
Just want to make sure I covered the room.
Actually, I had never disagreed with Scott until he was talking about them folk that had money and jobs and they get great. Man, if you don't get out of here, I got food stamps over here and the man won't sell me no chicken legs.
Come on, man.
Cut that out, Steve. We don't.
So how do we? So fellas, I really want to continue this conversation because we spent the whole time. I think it was some productive time, but I would like, because not unfortunately, we are in Black History Month. Black history is American history. Don't give me a month. I want to talk about.
Wait a minute. Hey, part two. Give him a part two.
No, we built this country. We're not just relegated to 28 days in February.
The shortest month.
I don't think that's what Black history means, though. If you look at it like that, I see why you would say that, though.
But can you give me?
See, man.
See, now you got to roll. Yeah,
roll 30 more minutes.
Keep this thing rolling.
You can part to it. You can part to it.
Yeah.
You cover 2 weeks. Get your rest for the next week.
Yeah, I know that's right.
No, do part two. Come on. You got time?
Yeah.
Can we talk? No, I don't want to mess up your stuff.
No, we can.
You got time?
I got time, but now this one, the part two, this getting ready to be curved.
No, we got time. We got time.
Okay.
We got time because this is
I ain't got to put it to one.
This is important.
This is important because listen, I believe that the answer for Black America is in Black America.
See, and when you do part two, start with that and then go into the joint. That's good.
Yeah. Because that's my vantage point. And again, it's a personal experience that is connected to that because of the people that I have in my immediate circle. Because of what I know and what I've personally been through, I'm able to say that Scott can help Scott. Not that the system does not play a role.
Sure.
In policies and in programs and in regulations and all of those things across all lines. But I believe that the answer to Black America lies within Black America.
A portion. And the greatest portion, I will say that, yes, you're right, a portion, but in the greatest portion it does. But now there is some folk that got to, move some stuff out of the way.
I get that. But I get that.
So
I get that.
That goes back to that conversation about personal responsibility. So at the individual level, to your point, man, Lawrence, as a father and husband in my house, I have a responsibility, a God-given responsibility to do certain things. Black, white, Hispanic, whatever, God-given. And as I recognize what community is doing around me or what's happening in society, I can, to a certain extent, put things in my children and my family to help them as they leave the house. But to Lee's point, I also have to inform them. If I'm going to be a good steward of my position, I got to also say, you're going to thrive in this, you're going to do this, put you up, set you up, help pay for this, and all that. I also have to say, here's the history of this country. Today didn't start. What we're dealing with today didn't start today. So when you walk out there, I don't want you to be unprepared. So
and that's value in that.
That's value in that.
Right. That is absolute value.
But I'm not saying to them, this pressure go come, so fall back and quit.
But how many people take that stance on this thing? Because we'll say, look, there's just racism. Look, the cops killing everybody. Now, whereas before, if you wanted to just plant on your land, you could get hung.
Right.
Now, there's data to show that cops are killing folk and that our black men, black women, that they are going out there and stuff can happen to you. But to Holman's point, that there's so much more opportunity.
Oh, sure.
There's so much more opportunity. And yes, because as you say, you tell your kid that these things can happen. So now that I'm prepared and I know that these things can happen, I can watch and be on guard for these things when they happen, so I can be prepared and I can overcome the obstacle. So that's how we get, to the point where that came from where we are to get to where we are. We're not rich,
right?
But I'm not begging either.
That's exactly right. You can eat what you want to eat.
That's it.
And so there's that personal response, the house, but you can't dismiss the systems, like to your point, that are in place, right? So if there's a governing thing, and by the way, so we get into some more Bible in this section, right?
Yeah, let's get it.
Right? So Romans 13, right? The government has a role.
Yes, the government has a role.
It has a role. And because they are in a position of authority, it's only because God allows it.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we have to say, well, if God has given this position of authority to exist, I don't expect the government to be the church, but I do expect them to go against evil, to celebrate that which is right. And so if the government, for example, has been very involved, as I said in the first part, in the demise of a group, and they have been historically.
Yeah.
They have been.
Yeah.
Then if they try to put forth effort to assist in the repair, then I have to at least hear that. Even though sometimes in that assist, going back to what you said previously, they can put together a program that actually helps to perpetuate the wrong thing.
Exactly.
So I say, for example, from the government, okay, there's poverty. You got a single mom. All right, let me give them some help. Okay, then the dude show up. If that dude show up,
Yeah.
Take it out.
Yeah,
do the help.
Yeah.
So the system wasn't
Yeah.
saying, how can I continue to keep her single, I suppose. I think the intent initially for most was to help. But then you see, okay, so she is choosing to stay single so she don't lose her benefits, or they're not getting married. He in the house, but they ain't getting married, and all this other chaos. Right? So there's individuals.
And those are real conversations.
Those are
by
real
the way.
things. Oh, yeah.
Like, those are
That
real
happens.
conversations.
Yeah.
My mother, I remember when I was 11 years old, the first time we got on food stamps. We lived in a homeless shelter, moved with people, but now we're on food stamps for real, for real. My mother sat me down. She says, we will not be on food stamps for long. I refuse to let this govern us. And so we were on food stamps for a season, and we worked through that. She went and got a job. She went back to school, got her college degree in her 40s. You know what I mean? But that's the decision she made. Everybody making that decision.
So, man, God dang it. So, my grandmother, God bless her soul, she went home to be with the Lord in December of 2018. My God bless her, man. I think about her almost every day. But my grandmother grew up during the time of Jim Crow. Like, she remember black water fountain, white water fountains. She was alive when Emmett Till got killed. And I remember a conversation with my grandmother so vividly. This happened in 2015. Well, my grandmother said, I endured. Now, my grandmother worked as a waitress and as a dishwasher for most of her life. The hardest working person that I've ever known. God allowed me to bust some tables while she was waitering in Texarkana during the day. But I remember a conversation with her when she said, I've gone through the hell that I've gone through so that my kids wouldn't have to. When I look at you guys, I'm inspired. And I'm giving you your roses while you live.
Bless you, man.
I am inspired when I hear about a story of a Lawrence Scott, who was, and you just alluded to it. I didn't want to allude to it until you, dove into it, but was at the Star of Hope. God did what he did through the Star of Hope, took you out of the Star, now with God's help.
Yes.
Okay, that's the framework.
Yes.
Now you serve on the board of the Star of Hope, doing commercials for the Star of Hope, and you are one of the smartest guys that I know. And God has done that. And so when I hear all of this stuff, I say, Lawrence Scott.
Yeah.
Okay, Pastor Lee on the other side. Now, I'm not going to tell you a story until you open it up. But this brother here is also another one that inspires me. So looking at what God has allowed this brother to do from where he came from and all of the challenges that he had to do in his personal life to now being the executive director over a pantry that is literally feeding thousands of people a month.
Yeah.
Bless you, man.
I'm able to say, Pastor Lee.
Yeah.
And then I look at my spiritual father, our spiritual father,
Yes.
Pastor August.
Yes.
You know, if you blink,
Yep.
you're
Yeah.
going to drive right through Abbeville.
Yeah.
You blink.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
This brother tells you his story.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I'm a beneficiary
Yep.
of somebody that refused to take no.
We all are. In that aspect.
We are all.
Yeah, in that
so
aspect,
I
yeah.
look at it and I say, Pastor August.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not relegating it to that, but, within my circle, and I'm around a bunch of people that will hold me accountable
Yes.
to decisions that I make. So if
Yes.
y'all hear about me mistreating my wife,
We
or
come and get you done.
you're coming after me, right? Because I have a group around me that loves me enough that's going to hold me accountable.
Yes.
I think that's the way that we move this thing forward. Not to not acknowledge the issues,
Yep.
not to take the historical factor
Yes.
or the biblical side of it.
Yes.
That's a part of the conversation.
No, I love it.
But then to move it in such a way as we inspire people to do something beyond that.
Well, as we are talking now, we the Bible says this, that never grow weary in well doing. So as we are
That's your Bible.
black
That's my
men,
Bible, man.
as we are black men sitting here with telling our stories. You talked about your grandmother. I watched the 40 Years a Prisoner. It was about the MOVE organization in Philadelphia in 1978. I lived it. In 1978, they had black people that were holed up in a house. They poured hoses. 1978. I'm alive. I'm only 55 years old. Put hoses in there with the babies and the women to try to get them to come out of the house simply because the neighbors didn't want them there. And the mayor said, you know what, they shouldn't have taken over our city. So I've experienced this racism. And then you look at in 1984, I think the same thing, the mayor bombed a house and burned down a whole city block because some black folks just decided they wanted to live a certain way outside of how society said they should live. And this is in Philadelphia. Now, this is context for what we're talking about. This ain't the rural South. This is Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the fifth, sixth largest city. It was at the time it was the fourth largest city. I can remember one time in the city where there was an interracial couple that moved in together. They bought the house on a block in South Philadelphia. And if anybody's familiar with Philadelphia and how the architecture is, the houses are row houses. They're all connected with sheetrock in the middle. They came together and bombed the house, set the house on fire. So if I set your house on fire, the house on this side is going to get smoke or water damage, and the house on this side is going to get smoke or water damage, or it's all going to burn up. So I have experienced this racism in my life. I have, with these eyes, seen a cross burning. So I understand that racism exists. But when I talked about before about the victim mentality, I refused, and my father and my mother refused to allow me to be a victim. You're not going to be a victim. You got to continue to press on and continue to push through.
Yeah.
I don't disregard that there are people that had didn't have the opportunities that I had.
Yeah.
I had both parents in the house. Father was a trash man. Mom was a maid. Excuse me. I'm from a third generation college family. You guys know my story. I dropped out of college the first time because I didn't take advantage of all the opportunities that I had. But when I started to think about and I started to look at all of the opportunities that I had, something inside of me said, you know what, we're not going to waste this. And I refused to let my kids make excuses, but I did have that conversation. That, yes, these things happen, but here's what you got to do. Here's what you have to do. That's why I talk about the victim. We don't do victim in my house. Matter of fact, I told my boys when they were young, Lees don't have tear glands. We don't cry.
Okay, next section, let's talk about how you need to let your kids cry. Okay,
parenting skills.
But I think you're right, Lee. And back to what you said, even biblically, right? Because somebody might hear this conversation and say, it's not just a black thing. When you say, hey, I don't know how you framed it, but the help that the black folks need is with black folks. Within us. And know this, it is possible to take an interest in your ethnic group and still press towards unity.
So
absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because some people get confused. But when you look in the Bible,
that's a good word.
When Moses got his position, he took interest in his folks and made sacrifice. When you look at Esther, she took interest in her folks. And so it's you can do that and still be pressing towards a unified work.
That's a good word. That's a good word.
There is definitely stuff that we can do. And I think like those biblical characters, we have to take our positions that the Lord has given us and not get to a place where we act like we act brand new. We have to leverage what we have to be a support to folks who, and again, let me stop doing it like I made it. I ain't made it nowhere.
Come on, Doc.
But with whatever the Lord, whatever the Lord has given, to be a good steward of it, I have to be able to say, how can I assist? And if the Lord has given me a platform as a pastor, how can we biblically walk through this to be an assist to people?
And that's a good word, man. That is the Genesis 1, right? Because we are looking for unity, not uniformity.
That's it, man.
There you go.
And
I think that's a good
word, man.
That's the aim, right?
Yes.
Is to I don't know if we can all skip down the yellow brick road singing Kumbaya until Jesus gets back, but I do believe we can make some dramatic inroads in helping to bridge these chasms.
I would say we have to.
We have to.
Not even we can't. We have to. That's good because it really now speaks to, again, I'm trying to take a biblical perspective, in a matter of discipleship, right? That includes reaching people and walking with them. There's a biblical framework and view, but in the process of discipleship, you're touching everything, right? And so I think we have to be able to be in a position to do so.
And from your guys' perspective, man, as we looking at 2021 and all the stuff that is still going on, the stuff that we are still having to face, man, it takes people that are willing to sit down, because I've been enlightened on both sides.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he knows. I can sometimes dig my heels in. But one of the things that I'm grateful for is that I don't despise knowledge.
That's
right, I don't despise knowledge. And one of the progressive ways about having conversations like this is that each party, if you're willing, can glean, right, and can pull something away that you're able to take to another conversation.
Yep.
Right, and then broaden your perspective. And so I'm just from the opinion and from the mindset that, man, I don't believe that we are, you know, at a point to where we can all, you know, yoke up together and, you know, do. But I do believe, man, that this giant that I'm standing on the shoulders of my great-grandmother, her mother, and my ancestors before them, that I owe them a duty to press the hell out of the system, to fight against it with every ounce of being that I have. I have a duty to my grandmother specifically, in which I'm talking about, to do so much better than what she did. Because that's what she fought for, and that's the hell that she went through so that I wouldn't have to. Now, is it going to be in my lifetime? I don't know. Probably not. But can I chip away at this system bit by bit? I believe I can.
So what do we say to the guy who says, man, well, you had all these opportunities because these people have come in your way and have helped you, impressed you, and given you opportunities? What do you say to that brother and that sister from...
I would ask, what do you define? I mean, Scott said he had uncles and he had people, you know... I don't want to go back to the whole dad thing. But,
Yeah.
You know.
See, so yeah. So again, that goes back. In part three.
Fatherlessness, right?
Yeah.
I ain't part of that.
There you go. There you go.
He don't know.
There you go. So even when I said I had uncles, right, their presence was enough.
Yeah.
And I guess to Lee's point, there are some people who maybe don't even have that, a positive presence. But again, it goes back to see, that's why I think, back to what you said, if that brother exists, I would say to that brother right there, I'm available.
Yeah.
Because there was at a time, and I asked that question because there was a time in our community where we had pastors and leaders and teachers and people that were in our everyday life to where we could look and see that you know, I want to be like that person. I think that part of us, the answer being within ourselves, is some of us have to go back and when I say some of us, I'm not talking about successful, I'm talking about some of us who understand that there is some obstacles and understand that the system's still in place, that we go back to the community and we go back in there, get on the ground and stop looking at those Negroes. I'll say it. I'll go ahead and say it because there's some of us that will sit there and say, you know, well, you know, we got to go back and put some time back into the community because fatherlessness is worse than it ever was. We have just guys and people that don't have a good story because of the way the system's set up. But that's not this show. That was last show. That we had brothers that were locked up and they've been, you know, that happened.
Yes.
But we got to give them inspiration, and then we got to give inspiration to the generation behind and say, yes, you can. I don't know how many times that I've told my story about drug addiction and underachieving and all that to people, and they sit there going, what? Really? Yes, that's my story. That's what it, but that's the inspiration. And that's how in our community we can come back and do and give back and help us to raise up as a people.
And so
men have to do.
And so, not to beat this proverbial dead horse, but that is the essence of what I'm saying. Your mother said, you know what? We ain't gonna be on food stamps long. I'm gonna do what I gotta do. I'm gonna press through. Your parents, your mom and your dad said, listen, ain't no excuses over here. 47 years old, didn't find out my dad's first name until I was 27. Only talked to him twice in my entire life, never seen him a day before in my life. That was a driving force for me to be the best dad that I could possibly be for my 4 kids.
Facts.
I was absolutely determined that my children would never go through what I went through. Never would go to bed and daddy not be in the house, never wake up and daddy not be in there. That was a personal decision that I made. I was getting ready to say my cousin's name. I ain't gonna say that. I got some people around me that still perpetuated that same cycle. From the exact same bowl, exact same environment. 2 different decisions were made. And people that came from the exact same environment with the exact same circumstances. But 2 different decisions were made. And so when I'm talking about that, all I'm simply saying is we can, within the black community, with all of the stuff and the barrels of hell aimed against us and all the systems that are put against us, which we acknowledge, we can still say that through hell or high water, I'm getting ready to change some things. I'm getting ready to press back, no matter what it looks like, on this that is oppressing me. I believe that we can do that as a black community.
I agree. And I think that's why you can't ignore the other factors to your point. So yes, we have to do this, but also if we have people of diversity, diverse people in public office who can help navigate legislation in certain spaces to help change some systems, that helps too. Right? That ain't the final answer. Like we trust in God with everything, but it helps.
Yeah, it helps.
So it's what happens in your house. It's some effect in public office and a few other factors that kind of play into it. I just think sometimes people say it's just this and they drive that and ignore this piece on both sides.
And that's valuable.
Joseph chose to be faithful.
There you go, that Bible.
Come in here with that scripture, man.
He chose to be faithful, right?
Scripture,
no matter what he went through, and he went through a lot.
Yes.
He chose to be faithful.
Now that second time, I would probably be like, Lord, look here.
Yeah. In the jail thing,
Come on.
That'd be like, now. First time I was in a hole. Now I'm in jail. But
for something that I didn't do.
But he chose to be faithful, no matter what his circumstance or situation was.
Yes.
So as we're talking about this unity and unification through the gospel, we've got to give people these messages of hope. And here's the thing. I shared this with you before, that everybody has a story. Everybody has a situation. Do you choose to let that situation be your springboard or your crutch? Which one do you choose? Because it's the same situation. Now I can bounce off of this thing and say, because I didn't have a dad, I'm going to rise higher and be the best dad that I want to be. Or I can take this crutch and say, man, woe is me. I ain't never had no daddy. So therefore, my dad was a functional alcoholic. And I could say, hey, well, because he was a functional alcoholic, I was a functional drug addict. I could have stayed in that space. I had a job, wasn't the greatest job, but it was a pretty good job in handling my business. But no, that's not that springboard that says, man, I want better. I want to do better. I want to be better. And that's because of the foundation that my mother gave me with Christ. And said, man, you can be better. You can do better. And there's always that hope. But I'm glad that God allowed me to stay faithful to what he had called me to do, because you couldn't have told me that today I'd be sitting here doing this based on what God has allowed us to happen. Allowed to happen.
I want you guys to, I'm going to put this on camera so I can put y'all on blast. Look at your schedule, because we got to come back and do a part 2.
I thought this was part 2.
No, we're going to do a part 2.
Okay.
Part 2.
Gotcha.
You buying lunch?
Because we got to, we can do our thing. We can do our curve thing, man. I'll put that out on camera.
No, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Okay.
Put me on blast.
And we will confirm whether or not he actually.
We want to do this, man. But I want to thank you guys, man, because curb means a lot to me. You guys know that, and I don't, the whole male friendship kind of dichotomy is something that without going into that, I appreciate curb. I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate the challenge. I appreciate the biblical unity that we have as brothers, because I think that's one of the things, or the thing that holds us together the way that it does. Because I want to talk about some stuff on the next one. Because racism goes all the way back to the Bible. The Bible speaks about racism.
Yes.
So, Ecclesiastes 3, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So there are ways in which we can look at the biblical narrative and see what God did in those particular spaces, and then try to copy and paste that over to where we are today. But I also want to talk about on our next show, I want to give them a little bit of a heads up. We're going to talk about politics. And I want to talk about something that's important to me, and that's the decimation of the black home. The decimation of the black home. Single mother homes, absentee fathers,
but it's all related.
Economic disenfranchised, all of those things that come along with making a home, your children, my children, your children are 100 times less likely because of the foundation that they enjoy at the house to be in any of these situations that we're speaking of now. And it's because of certain things that are being done inside of the four walls of our houses that are solidifying these generations to come.
Now, we're not just talking about black kids. We're talking about American families.
But I'm specifically framing this to the black culture. Not saying that numbers are making look in one. I'm saying that there is a definite here at Bethel's family on the southwest side of Houston. We see this a lot. There's a lot of little babies running around this church, and the daddies ain't running with them. It's a lot of little things, and I know some of the challenges that come along with that. My children will never have to experience some of the things that I did as a kid coming up in a single-parent household because they have both mother and father there. My wife stayed at home as a stay-at-home mom for 6 years, during the most formidable years of my kid's life, and she was able to do that, right? And I believe that had a positive impact on them moving forward. So just when we come back for the part 2, everybody, we'll take care of that. I want to say this publicly, man. God bless you, Scott.
Bless you, man.
Harvest Point Church over there off of 518 in Pearland.
Shadow Creek Parkway.
Shadow Creek Parkway.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give a plug out to the ministry. There go your camera right there. Look right
here?
there. Right there. That's your camera.
So I think my mother was actually 50 when she got a degree. I wanted to clear that up. Harvest Point Fellowship Church, 12155 Shadow Creek Parkway. We'll love to see you.
Great teacher. Great teacher, man.
It's encouraging, man.
Great expositor. Great expositor.
I'm trying to be like him when I grow up.
Yeah, that's a good word, man. Scott doing his thing.
Let me say this also. I love you, man.
I appreciate that, man.
I love you, Doc.
Thank you, man.
Thank you,
and
man.
I love you too.
And watch this.
Sure.
Do you realize that he said that and didn't have to connect something to it? Like, man, I love you, man. Love you in the Lord, man. Love you in the Lord, man. No, it just said, I love you, brother.
Man. That's it.
Yeah. Now you can. Now I told my sons, you can say I love you. You just can't cry. It's all good.
Yeah, real talk. So Lee, right there in the camera, man, go ahead and give a shout out to the ministry that you oversee.
Bethel's Heavenly Hands is the benevolence arm of Bethel's Family Baptist Church, and we're located at 12660 Sandpiper Road, Houston, Texas 77035. If you have some need that we can fulfill or fill, just give us a call or come on by and see us. And I'll say it just like Scott. I love you. I love you,
bless you,
brother, for sure. Because man, y'all helped me through some stuff.
Yeah, man, you don't know,
Bishop, you got to answer your phone, though,
Pray for me.
No, Scott busy, man. Scott busy.
Man. No, I ain't that busy.
But man, I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Really, I want you guys to look at your calendars for next week. If we're able to do it, we're able to do it. If not, we'll make some adjustments because I definitely want to get to some of the things that we text so that we can talk about it, man. I really enjoyed this conversation. And remember, no matter where you're watching us from, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, likes, comments, subscribe, wherever you access your podcast from, Spotify, Pandora, wherever that may be, you can also get Studio B right there. Thank you for 2,500 subscribers on YouTube, man. We appreciate that.
Man.
Send that out to everybody else, man. Like, follow, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week, man. God bless you.
Cause I don't keep them. 'Cause I don't keep them.